Welcome to Conversations with Peter Boghossian. I'm here with Umut, who's a fascinating story. He wrote the book Cancel, The Left Way Back from Woke. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you. Greetings from a slightly chilly Barcelona.
Oh, you're in Barcelona now. What are you doing in Barcelona?
Well, I mean, I was living in Sweden, and after I lost
Yeah,
my son and all of that,
yeah,
I relocated
yeah.
here, and I'm very happy, honestly.
Do you speak Spanish?
Yeah, improving.
Improving. Yeah, that's good. It's all Barcelona's. You know it's always been a little bit tricky to understand. So briefly, for those of us who are not, for listeners who are not familiar with your story is fascinating and tragic. And when I first learned about it, I was quite taken aback. Could you guide us through it for a couple minutes? Just take like 2 minutes and explain, please.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually well, it was quite traumatic, but I mean, whenever I tell the story to someone for the first time, it's like the immediate reaction to it would be, oh my god, this is a Netflix story. You have to write a
Yeah.
script about it. I was accused of stalking by a former partner. No, not in academia, nothing, no power relationships or whatsoever. This was at the height of Me Too.
Right.
And Sweden being Sweden, they just ran a kind of kangaroo investigation, but I wasn't able to take care that much of it because that was the time. This was the last 6 months of my son, who was struggling with a really malign form of childhood cancer for the last 4 years. So I wasn't even in Sweden. In the end, nothing happened. I was given just a written warning and all of that. But then, the rumors started going around in the academic circles because one, I'm known internationally, in nationalism
Yeah.
studies. I'm
Yeah.
also not very much kind of liked by the Turkish government because I'm critical of the regime. So I lawyered up. I just sent her a couple of cease and desist letters. So at the end, in 2020, she went on Turkish Twitter and said that I was, that I received a warning for harassment, leaving it vague so that it could be understood as sexual harassment, even though that was never the accusation, and all of that. I became a trending topic in Turkish Twitter for about 24 hours. The Turkish government jumped on the opportunity and declared me a terrorist.
Mm.
Actually, they liked it to present it as terrorist pervert. And then I went, yeah, I mean, terrorist pervert was interesting, coming from a government which actually, defends marrying with 14-year-old kids with men, etc. But anyway, that was the start of a huge legal battle in Sweden and Turkey. I sued her for defamation and gross defamation. She was found guilty out of 7 out of 11 counts of gross defamation in
Okay.
Sweden.
Give me the, without so many details. What was the state part of it? Like, what did the state do?
The state, in the beginning, they jump on it because they had some stuff, that they were going back to the Gezi protests in 2013. So they saw this as an opportunity to get rid of, to hunt down a critic, a dissident.
Mm.
So the headlines of the pro-government newspapers were like, oh, our sister was let down by the Swedish state, but we're going to go and protect her. Now, the
And what?
moment they realized that this wasn't actually going to stick, they backed down. In 1 week, they disappeared.
And what was their beef with you?
Because I was critical of the Islamist government and the growing authoritarianism of the Erdogan regime.
Okay. All right.
I mean, as
So,
a left wing, but also a pretty liberal, person. I was, and I had a platform. I could write in English, I could write in Open Democracy, The Guardian, and all of that. So I wasn't that much in favor.
okay. Okay. And Reed just texted you a message in the
Yes,
text.
yes, I can read it. I can read it. Read.
Okay. So my question is, one of the things that I find fascinating about what you're doing in our correspondence, and from what I've read and heard, explain to me the so you would self-identify as someone who's on the left, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And
That would be, yeah, the shortest, basically,
yeah,
description.
just briefly, and we can talk about what that means in a second. So you would also self-describe as somebody who is, would it be fair to say, against critical social justice ideology? Is that right?
Yes, yes, indeed. I mean, I think in my last, just a sec. Um, I would consider myself as, just a sec. I lost. Yeah, I found you now again. Yeah. Yeah, and well, I would have said anti-woke left, but the point is, I don't see what we refer to as woke as a leftist progressive movement. So basically, it's not. I see it as a, you discuss it with other guests of yours. You know, they call it a religion, a cult, and all of that. For me, it's basically what matters is their illiberalism and their reactionary. And I don't see this coming together with the left wing tradition as we know it.
Okay,
Simple as that.
okay. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want to make sure we can fit this in an hour. So so if you can, like, briefer answers are better.
Yeah.
So when someone says, or when you say that you're on the left, what does that mean?
I do believe in social justice, not the way they define it, but social justice. And I can explain that later on. And I believe in equality. And it's important because, I watched your other podcasts. That's not equity. I am for equality, egalitarianism, basically. Good old egalitarianism for all, not
So,
equality of outcome.
okay, so for you, being on the left means equality of opportunity.
Equality of opportunity. Also, maybe at some point, like equality should not be achieved by giving what we consider as oppressed people historically or for other reasons
Okay.
affirmative action, but basically by raising the standards for all. So
Okay.
equality should be achieved at top,
So
not by bringing down.
usually when someone says they're on the left, that is not the first thing they say. Usually they talk about truncating economic distributions at the top end. They talk about economic justice. They talk about progressive tax rates. They talk about, higher minimum wage. So it's primarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, I just want to make sure we're on the same
Yeah,
page.
of course.
They talk about leftism first and foremost as as an economic, they use the term in an economic context. Is that not how you would use it? Or is that
No,
how would you?
I
Oh,
would
okay.
use. I mean, I do believe in economic redistribution, progressive taxing, etc. But I mean, and I do think that class matters as much as all the other components of identity, at least. And I believe that actually one of the ways in which race and gender and all these toxic debates, around culture wars, the bread and butter of culture wars, are actually quite related to
Okay.
economic. I mean, the bourgeoisie, basically, the white middle classes who are pushing for these things.
Okay. So let's let's see if we can narrow the conversation, because I just want to make sure that people listening to this, we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
What are the differences between woke and the left for you?
Woke is a betrayal of the values that it purports to basically defend.
And-
Identity politics,
Okay.
all these progressive values and all of that. It's individualistic, it's narcissistic, it's based on consumerist way of taking things. So it doesn't actually struggle for collective good. It doesn't believe in shared values because that is the way in which it is interpreted today. Identity politics is about particular identities,
Okay,
individual
all right,
identities.
let's really slow down here. So
Mhm.
when you say woke is individualistic, what do you mean?
Individual offense and the concept of harm is extended to include subjective offense, like I feel offended by misgendering or by dead naming or by these things, uh, and that's a very individualistic way of seeing. I mean, there is no shared values here.
Are you using individualistic as a synonym for subjective?
In a way, I would have say a better word for it would be narcissistic.
So for you, and again, I just
Not
want to make sure.
individualism as
I just
as in liberalism,
yeah.
but personal interests. Yes, like my interests, selfishness, self-centeredness.
Okay. So how would you define identity politics then?
The way it's defined by the original, I mean, the black feminists who coined the term in 1977, it was a way of doing politics, one way of doing politics. They were doing politics because they felt excluded by the black nationalist movement and by the white feminist movement. So they came up with this notion in order to actually broaden the horizon of politics. And that was based on coalition building, on working with white feminists, with conservative people, with pro-life groups. See, identity politics was one way of doing politics. The formulation I use in my book is that what we see today, identity politics, whereas it was originally, it was one way of doing politics, today it's about identity. There's no politics in it. Identity has become a sacred value which you should not question, you should not debate, and accept it as a moral absolute. There's no politics in it. It's anti-politics even.
Okay. So helping me to understand this, when you say you're an anti-woke leftist, what does
Mhm.
that mean?
I believe in shared values. I believe in community, like coalition building. I believe in talking to you or to, what other people would consider as right wing. I mean, we go through the drill. We've all been called fascists, bigots,
Nazis,
right wingers, or
morons, grifters.
morons. In the best grifters, yes, and in the best of cases, in my case, because if they Google me, they can see that I've never had anything like that. So they say useful idiot. I'm an enabler, dog whistle politics. All these things, but I don't believe in that. I mean, I believe that I can talking to you. I mean, first of all, of course, we have I agree with you with a lot of things from what I've read and what I've listened to. But even if on the issues of disagreement, I believe in what you call street epistemology. Like, why shouldn't I discuss these differences of opinion and try to find a common way? This doesn't mean that we would find common ground with everybody, but it means that then that's the way. Um, there's a very kind of fine distinction. It's not kind of confusing that much actually. Alicia
Oh,
Garza, one of the initiators of Black Lives Matter, calls it a difference between empowerment, individual empowerment, and power.
okay.
So the
So let,
woke left is after individual empowerment. I, on the other hand, believe that we need to have the build broad coalitions and to appeal to the maximum largest possible group of people on the lowest common denominator, and then just move on, progress.
okay. So somebody in the comments wrote, and I want to pick up on this because I think it's so important. The left cannot make its way back. At its core, the left is irredeemable. The woke are taking leftism to its natural conclusion. social justice is inherently immoral. But bracketing everything else, the woke are taking leftism to its natural conclusion. I hear this all the time, and I assume you think that's false. And if you do, why?
I don't think it's false, considering what happened after, these postmodernism, queer theory kind of things. I think it was bound to come to this point, but the hopeful in me 10 years ago wouldn't have seen it. So I don't disagree necessarily with it, but I see this as a capture, as a movement for capture, like a hijacking of the left by these new kind of what we call the woke. Okay, for just so what I'm doing is I believe that we should reclaim the left and the progressive ideals from these woke people or with these woke attacks. I'm
But
fighting for it.
okay,
Is
so
it realistic? That's another question.
I'm confused. I'm extremely confused. So if the woke are taking leftism to its natural conclusion, if you reclaim it, what will stop it from happening again?
I wouldn't know that, but I know that what they're doing to what they pass, what passes as left today is not left. I mean, there's nothing justice about, there's nothing about social justice as it exists today is about justice. It's about individual personal agendas, or for the true believers is about they do believe. I mean, you discuss this with a lot of your guests. It's replacing religion and all of that. So that's the fight that I would like to give, is to go back to the ideals that we cherish as left. I remember you telling one of your guests, that for instance Marxism should be taught in schools and let people decide about it, like whether it's a good solution. It's not. I agree with parts of it, I don't agree with other parts of it. Whereas what passes as woke and left, I disagree with all of it, because that's not, why was it the natural is it possible to return something from its natural conclusion? Yes, if you get rid
Okay.
of all this nonsense. Yes.
Okay. So we really need to slow down. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I need your responses to be brief, please, so I can understand, because this is getting complicated fast for me. So what is the difference for you? What is the difference between woke, leftism, and liberal? Are the differences among those? What are the differences?
um Let's start with liberalism. I'm a
Okay.
liberal in the sense in which you are. I believe in freedom, basic freedoms, individual freedoms, and human rights.
Okay.
And I do see this as part of left progressive tradition. That's one. The leftist, like what the step that I take this a little bit further would be, yes, I believe in economic redistribution and better solutions. Not necessarily socialism, but could be left like a welfare state as it exists in Scandinavia,
Okay.
or as see. Now, woke is for me the opposite all of this. If you want a historical example, I would say it's Stalinism. No tolerance for dissent, no debate, no self-criticism, no discussion.
So wokeism for you are the authoritarian elements absent the economic elements.
Yes, and the problem there is, of course, I haven't seen any economic suggestions on the part of those people on the walk.
Okay.
Identity, cultural matters overtook everything.
Sure. They bartered one for the other. Okay. And so liberalism for you, in a nutshell, is what? Individual freedoms and universal rights. Would you consider that liberalism?
Yes, politically, yes,
Okay. So for you, is wokeism illiberal?
definitely.
Okay. And liberalism values individualism then, correct? Or does it?
It does. It does. Yeah.
And so is leftism illiberal?
I don't think it should be, but existing versions of it, that includes woke, are illiberal. Left doesn't have to be liberal. I mean, Stalinism was not liberal either, you know?
For sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
whereas George Orwell, an English lefty,
Yeah.
was pretty much for freedom of expression, freedom of thought, freedom of association. He objected to the incarceration of the British Nazi mostly
Right. Okay.
because he believed in free speech.
Okay. So again, I'm sorry to take so much time on this, but it's just so
No, but
important
it's
that
important.
it really is that I understand this. So leftism in your mind is neutral with regard to having any particular telos other than core principles. I'm thinking of the Dungeons and Dragons thing. The alignment is neutral. So it could, from the earlier question that a viewer asked, leftism could morph into wokeism, like as the telos is the natural end of leftism.
I mean, I don't know whether it ought to be, but we know that it did. It always happened that way.
Okay, and is that an aberration, or is that a kind of historical cultural trajectory given first principles?
I would have liked to answer your question and say that it's an aberration, but unfortunately, I don't think it is. I think the listener who asked the question was right. It has inherently a tendency to go wrong.
Okay, so if that's the case, then why are you a leftist?
Because I believe that there might be ways of salvaging the ideals of the left, justice, equality, a better distribution of income, without without losing your way.
So you don't think that it's an you don't think it's an again, I'm just trying to understand this. So you don't think that these trajectories are necessarily intrinsic to the ideological presuppositions. You believe that they are likely accidents.
Accident would, I think, entail take it agency out of it. I believe that this is. You said once that you're a Lockean, classical liberal. I'm more Hobbesian. So I
Okay.
believe that there is a kind of evilness in human
Yeah.
nature.
Nasty, brutish, and short, baby. Okay.
Exactly. The first sentence of Leviathan. So I
Yeah.
believe that it's not accidental. We once and anybody, and I'm not saying I'm an exception. We
Yeah.
take it to the wrong. Once we have the power, we like it, and we used to abuse it.
Who's we? Humanity?
In general, yes.
And so, in your view, you need leftism to put curbs on individual and governmental power. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would definitely believe checks and balances and a system, where the executive and the legislative and the judiciary will be controlling each other. Yes.
So, for you, which political philosophy handles power better? Is it leftism, liberalism, libertarianism, wokeism? What would it be? Something with an L.
I would say in a European context, social democracy, in an American context, democratic socialism, but not. I mean, the democratic socialism has actually evolved into really a woke position in the last since 2019. I mean, there's an amazing clip of the Democratic National Congress from 2019 where people are just spending an hour about pronouns and stuff like that. So I'm talking about still people who believe the importance of Marxism, the equality, etc., etc. And there are people who believe in that. I'm not necessarily a Bernie Sanders fan, but fine. I mean, he is closer to me than say Biden.
Well, in your mind, which would be more likely to lead to wokeism, democratic socialism or liberalism?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know because, see, that's probably one of the issues that we have, because liberalism that we have is dominated by right-wing actors. So I don't think conservatism in a Republican sense would lead to a less authoritarian and more liberal solution.
When you say liberalism is dominated by conservative actors, what do you mean?
I mean Trump. I mean DeSantis.
Y-
See, they're not
y-
liberals in the sense in which you would define the term. They want to fight woke, fine, but they want to do it with government intervention, ban books, ban critical race theory.
Who do you think is more liberal, Ron DeSantis or Bernie Sanders?
I wouldn't know that much, but I would wage on Sanders in that sense. My wager would be on Sanders.
Okay. So
Just
yeah, go ahead.
just choosing between the options you give me, not to
Yeah,
extend.
just who is more liberal, Trump or DeSantis?
I don't think either of them are liberal. Because
Okay,
they don't tolerate dissenting views. They're not liberal. They are against woke, and for the reasons that you and I'm sure, share. But the answer to this is not to let discourse free and let students decide, because what are we criticizing? Indoctrination in campuses, right?
among other things, yeah.
Among other things. Rather than destroying that, they are actually trying to introduce another form of indoctrination by banning books on LGBTQ issues, I don't know, it's even Great Gatsby. And that, I think, is the problem. That's the difference between me and Christopher Rufo.
Okay. Well, there's so much
I wouldn't
here.
object. I wouldn't object to an evangelical conservative crusade. I think students should be given all options and decide for themselves.
Okay.
Not get rid of one group of books, as the woke did,
Yeah.
and then we reverse this by state action and we ban another set of books.
If they wanted to teach, and I'm asking to try to clarify here, if they wanted to teach phrenology in schools, do you think those books should be banned? Or if they wanted to teach Nazi race science, do you think those books should be banned?
I don't believe that any book should be banned. That includes the books that you mentioned. And they're not banned in a lot of countries. You can buy Mein Kampf if you want to.
Correct. It was just, in fact, in Sweden, it was just translated to Arabic in Malmö,
Of course.
Sweden.
Of
Yeah.
course. I mean, I'm Swedish citizen. I lived in Sweden for 10 years. It was a bestseller at some point.
Yeah.
And Sweden is not the most conservative country on the world, as we know.
Yeah, it always amazes me. This is just an aside. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but it always amazes me that that's surprising to people. It just completely amazes me. Who do you think is the best representative of liberalism in the United States today?
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't have a favorite person there, I have to say. I mean, I know that I pretty much believe that if he runs, Trump will win the next elections,
The
2024.
polling data appears to show that
Yeah,
in no uncertain terms.
I don't think Democrats stand a chance, not after the war in Gaza.
Okay, well, let's not fall down that rabbit hole yet.
Yeah.
So you want to rescue you want to rescue the left from wokeism. You want to, so shall we say, evacuate wokeism and get back to core tenets of leftism. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so let's drill down on that. So wokeism's captured major institutions,
Yes.
legacy media, the academies chief among those. But basically everything in society except it's captured the military, it's captured the CIA. It hasn't yet captured police forces. I think that's the last holdout. How would one go about doing this? Like, what's the blueprint? What's the master plan for this?
The opposite of what the woke people are suggesting us. We shouldn't discuss about these things. We should defund the police. The Trump voters are deplorables. They're idiots. We shouldn't have a discussion on transgender issues, on LGBTQ rights. We shouldn't have a discussion about race and racism. We shouldn't criticize Candy and D'Angelo. I'm saying that we should do the opposite of everything they say. First of all, I mean, we should start by question. What we should listen. That's the first step. Like you do in your whatever, see what people think, and that includes everybody. I'm not saying we should just speak within our tribe. Like I'm
Sure, of
speaking to
course.
you. You're a liberal, right? Classical liberal. I thought,
I'm a classical liberal, although everyone would call me a Nazi. But yeah,
yeah. And I would say that if I'm a kind of a very close to Rawlsian modern liberal, left wing liberal as well. In a sense that would make more sense to you. Uh, uh, but that's the point. Like, and that's why I mean the people that I idolize are like giving you real life examples. Someone like Arlie Russell Hochschild, who is a Berkeley professor, a sociologist, liberal in American terms. She went and spent 5 years in Louisiana doing fieldwork with Tea Party voters and wrote this great book, Strangers in Their Own Land, which tries to understand their point of view in order to be able to build bridges. This is exactly what Black feminists of the 70s did. As I said, they were working with third world women. They were working with white women. They weren't saying that, oh, we're Black lesbians and we don't want to, you can't understand us. This is the basis of, what? You and I should not be speaking about these things because we're white male, pretty much the same age, privileged. We need to first do the self-flagellation, the Shia way,
yeah,
the Candy
yeah,
way.
yeah.
And I'm saying, that doesn't work. I am who I am.
Yeah, the Shia way reference will probably be lost in a lot of people, although maybe not this audience. But you should definitely look up videos of that. It's really
Yeah,
quite something.
exactly.
Okay, so we have a super chat that I want to go to from Wolf for £5. Hey, thanks, Wolf. We appreciate it. If you had to choose any philosopher for a political leader, who would it be?
Liberal philosopher, definitely John Stuart Mill. Current living philosophers, my favorites would be people like Nancy Fraser.
Yeah.
Um, uh, um, Maybe less known, but I mean, I pretty much like the group based in Berkeley, Ian Hani Lopez, a group of people who are doing an active, like empirical work on what's the best message which could appeal to both Trump voters and Black Lives Matter supporters, this is called the race class narrative, and that's the kind of stuff that I like. On the
Okay.
left, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if one of the live in the United States, but one of the things that I've found, I run a small nonprofit, and I'm very, very careful to not endorse people,
Yeah.
and I try to not talk about politics because I think that our decision should be evidence-based, based upon the evidence, independent of political affiliation. Sometimes the right is correct, sometimes the left is correct, sometimes they're both wrong. It is, I will say, an embarrassment to me that of all the people in this country, we have chosen Biden and Trump who would you like to see? Like, if you could, of the existing candidates, nobody that isn't in the race, who would you like to see on the Republican and Democrat side? Like, who do you think offers a significantly and substantively different voice so that it will give voters an actual choice between policy positions?
Well, I
What
don't know
one of
really.
those representing the left?
Uh, I don't see that many options right now running. I mean, and I'm not saying this to save you from the trouble of justifying the program or not to take sides, but I really don't see any, and that includes independent candidates like Cornel West. I think is a very important voice to listen to get inspiration from. But as a president, no. I mean,
Yeah. Okay. So real quick, who do you think it is? Who would you like to see? Like Vivek Ramaswamy and versus RFK, or who would to you be someone who represents the left, or forget about the
yeah.
possibility that they'll actually be elected. Like who do you think could offer an articulation of a strong point of view that
Honestly, I don't have an answer, Peter. You know,
okay.
I mean, I because I mean, I'm not an expert on American politics, but of course I follow it as much as I can, and I don't see anyone who would fill in this position.
Okay.
Honestly,
What do you think of Zizek?
oh, huh. I mean,
This is
he's
a question.
entertaining.
Yeah,
He's
this is a question
entertaining.
from one of our listeners. Yeah.
I do. I mean, I like him in the sense that uh, well, I see him as a kind of nice, harmless man who himself defines himself, as like that. And even though he talks too much and he writes too much, I find things that could stimulate interesting thoughts in me. I don't agree with 90% of the things that he supports, but I do think, yeah. I mean, I would take him on any day, over say Rufo, because I know what he will say. Zizek can surprise me.
Okay. What do you think of Thomas Sowell?
I'm not very familiar with him, but I know that I like his work.
Okay. And you don't have to answer this question if you want to. How old are you?
54. I think we're very close.
But yet a child, son. I'm 57.
Ah, okay. Well,
Um,
man.
so, it's okay.
And I cut down on sugar.
Oh, you
You'll get
did.
the
Good for
reference.
you. Good for you. It's one of the greatest toxins. Last night, after we did jiu-jitsu, I went to a guy's house. I never have like sweets ever. I had about a half a cookie. Would you say, Reed? I had about a half a cookie. It didn't do me in, but I never do things like that. Okay, cool. So in your mind, what would, like, if you could institutionalize the values of leftism, what would that society look like?
I think first of all, everybody would free to speak their minds, and nobody would be forced to adopt a viewpoint necessarily. So, and that's the thing that kind of bothers me the most with the woke movement is the double standards, the hypocrisy.
Well, for sure, but
So,
let's not go
yeah,
there yet. Just
yeah,
so for you, free speech is intrinsic to leftism.
yes, it's a necessary condition. Maybe it's not sufficient, but it's the first and the most important step.
Okay. Okay, got it. And no double standards.
No, no.
And
Well,
equality. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no. The only thing that I would be, I'm not a free speech absolutist in the sense that I do believe that there are certain things, hate crimes, incitement to violence, that I wouldn't tolerate. But that's already regulated by law.
And for you,
So,
the difference between a hate crime and a regular crime is what? Like there should be a different penalty.
uh, no, but there should be a penalty at least. Like, I mean, incitement to violence. This question that was, that was making rounds on Twitter today. Would you, I mean, is calling an elimination of Jews in the campus, is it against your code of conduct? The answer should be yes.
Well, yeah,
We may disagree, but I mean, the point is, for me, yes.
right. It's so monstrous that even to contemplate that. I agree with Jonathan Haidt's response, although I thought it was quite tame. The very same people. I mean, I've been saying this for years, and I've actually warned people about this, but of course, no one listens until it's too late. Hence, we get the situation that we're in now. But I am curious to revisit something that you said. I have a question for you. Are hate crimes compatible with freedom of speech?
I don't know. It's a fine line there. I mean, I've read years ago a book that from a international politics and legal philosopher, Jeremy Waldron, who has a great book on hate speech. I mean, it's not an easy line to decide, and I think it should just be decided on a context by context basis. I mean, when you say, I mean, I'm drawing on the same example because it's a really good example. Like when the president of Harvard says to
Right.
the representative who asked the question, it would be a harassment, it would be a problem if people act on it. Then this is the most ridiculous and horrible, outrageous answer you can get. So because the question is, can you call on the elimination of Jews? So what does
Yeah.
that mean?
Yeah. The harm and hate
Like,
speech he talked.
so
Yeah.
you have to attack someone because he or she is Jew, and then it becomes harassment. I mean,
Well,
that's
again, I
the
think
thing for me.
that the thing to realize is that these are the very same people who have been screaming about microaggressions and trigger warnings and giving safe
Exactly.
space for people for the most, not even infractions or infringements, for like, oh, where are you from? Or, I mean, it's just, again, I find it so frustrating because I've been screaming about it and nobody's listening, and here we are. But I want to go to two questions. Emily King, £5. Hey, thanks, Emily. Who defines right side of history while it's still going on? Great question.
No, nobody. We should decide on this by discussing and learning in the process from each other. And I mean, I'm not even sure there is a fixed right side of history. I mean, we are human beings. We evolve. Societies evolve. Cultures evolve. They learn from each other. So the whole idea of right side of history is in itself authoritarian and illiberal, I think, because it's
So
the
you,
person who
yeah,
calls the shots. That's famously used by Guardian journalist Owen Jones. You're on the wrong side of history. Who is he to tell me I am?
okay.
And
So let's
I would have said this to everybody, by the way. And
okay.
it's
So
not.
let's drill down on that a little bit. So, have you been told you're on the wrong side of history?
Oh, of course. Well, I mean, see, that's the thing. All these cancel campaigns and all of that. I mean, you're on the receiving end. You have a larger platform. That's why you're more kind of probably targeted. But in my case, I mean, I see a weird thing. I mean, if I were a woman, I would be attacked more ferociously, I think. Women are affected much worse than we do on social media. So I'm not directly attacked as such, but I am being silently deplatformed. I mean, I
Oh,
couldn't
okay.
get my book reviewed,
All
you
right, hold
know.
on. Let's hold on. Let's just
I
stick
mean,
to the wrong side of history. Go
yeah.
ahead. Let's
No, I
stick to the
haven't
wrong.
been called to be on the wrong side of history, but my former friends or some colleagues that I barely knew have accused me of being a useful idiot.
Okay.
That I'm being used by the right.
So you don't believe? Do you believe that the moral arc bends towards justice?
I don't see it happening in real life. I would have liked to, but I don't see that it's working right now.
Okay, so you believe that that the values of any particular age are either capricious or kind of subject to natural. So okay, so I'm trying to reconcile the fact that you believe that there's no right side of history.
But I
Is
would
it
agree with this, what Reed shown, huh? I mean, this optimism I would share. But in real life, I a lot of things are happening that make me doubt this.
okay? So so do, okay, so I'm having difficulty reconciling this position with other things. So you don't believe? Do you think leftism should be universalized? That is, and it should be a value adopted by all societies, all places, all languages, etc.
No, because see, the question contains the answer in it, because I don't think that any ideology should be universalized by fiat.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
shouldn't be. Yeah, I mean, like, I believe in what I believe to be true, and I would try to, if I were a politician, I would do that. I'm an academic, so I'm writing, and I would try to convince as many people as possible that my truth is good for the society. But that's it. That's the only thing that I can do.
See, that's interesting. So you're a kind of
So
postmodern leftist then.
well, I don't like the term postmodern anymore. I mean, they used to call me that in the 90s when I was like a junior academic. But no, I mean, the way that postmodernism now is, I mean, it's horrible. Let's just say that I'm a liberal leftist. I don't believe in forced choices.
But you believe that those values ought to be universalized.
I believe that if these values are universalized naturally, through a process of dialogue, and people are convinced, they vote for me, etc., etc., then I believe that it would be the best outcome. Yes.
Okay, so do you, do you believe that the values ought to be universalized? And
I think
if you do, yeah, okay, then there is a wrong side of history.
I do believe that there are certain values which are universal, and they are laid out in universal human rights statements.
Okay, so
One,
then
and the most important,
there would be a wrong side
dignity.
of history.
Yes, I think, yes. In that sense, if someone doesn't believe in human dignity, that person would be on the wrong side of history. But wrong side of history, I don't know. But it's the worst position that you can be.
Okay, cool. So we got a super chat here. Someone wants to ask you a question from NYN for $5. Thanks. How much do you think Marx's anti-Semitic writings, where he says Jew is synonymous capitalism, is the root of this leftist hate we see now?
I wouldn't blame it on Marx. I mean, I am aware of this. By the way, I mean, Marx was also. I'm a student. I'm a scholar of nationalism. Marx also had this distinction between great historic nations and the small ones which need to be occupied, like Ireland, Poland. He was not the best person when it comes to gender, domestic violence, and all of that. With misogyny. But I don't, I mean, I still think that there are certain things in Marx that I can learn, but the anti-Semitic streak in the left thought is, yeah, I mean, Marx has it, and other leading thinkers had it. I mean, I just received actually a new book on this, the anti-Semitic tradition in left thought. It's an area that I don't know that much about, but I mean, of course, with the trigger of the recent events, I'm gonna look more into it. But I cannot see how people who claim to be left wing, like Jeremy Corbyn, Owen Jones, or all of these decolonization people, in the safety of their university offices, can say things that are, I didn't even understand what was going on the 7th of October. I mean, I couldn't believe my eyes the following day, hours later, to see the hatred. It was, I mean, I think it wasn't as dominant as it was made out of. There was a moral panic about it, but it was, I don't even understand how could a left wing or a liberal or anybody who believes in human dignity can find a way to justify these things.
Is anti so first of all, let me just say I've never liked the term anti-Semitism. I think it's
Mhm.
I far prefer the term Jew hater or Jew hatred. Is
Yeah.
is there a lot of Jew hatred in Turkey?
Oh yeah. I mean, I grew into it. I mean, I was lucky because my father was a Marxist writer. I was raised in a secular family. So in the circles that I hang out, there's no such thing. I mean, we were a different generation, but we were a minority. The Islamist government, the Islamists in power, it's very, very kind of embedded. I'm not blaming it on Islam per se. It's a way of
Yeah.
socialization. It's a cultural thing.
So uh, so when you grew up, you didn't experience it personally, but it was in like a chowder of anti-Semitism. It's a kind of a soup, a
Yeah.
cultural soup.
The the whole country is based on ethnic cleansing, genocide, and all of that. Well,
I
as
know.
you probably know. I
Yeah, I
mean,
do.
your surname suggests that you would know.
Yeah, it's one of the few countries I won't go to. Um, but we can come back to that later or not.
Yeah.
I had a student of mine years ago, excuse me, who told me that he was from a country in the Middle East. I won't name the country. I don't know why I won't
Hmm.
name the country. I just don't
Hmm.
want any more grief. But um, and he was sick, and the doctor, the MD, and I will name the country. It was Saudi Arabia.
Hmm.
The doctor in the doctor in this country told him that his body was inhabited by Jewish genies, not just genies, mind you, but Jewish genies. And he would tell me, and all throughout the years when I had students from the Middle East, they would tell me these just totally insane horror stories, like completely bizarre, hate filled. And so I don't know. I mean, this is another conversation, but I don't know how to get around that. I don't know. I don't even know what questions one should ask to try to blunt or remediate that. But where I'm going with this is I was wondering the relationship between anti Semitism and Marxism. I mean, I know Hitler hated Marxism, communism, because Marx was a Jew. Do you have any insight? And I know you've studied this,
Hmm.
and I've not read closely, but I've read some of your stuff on this. What do you think the relationship between Marxism and anti anti-Jewishness or Jew hatred is?
I think it was part of the historical context. I mean, I would say, and this is just a speculation because I haven't read specifically on this, but I mean, as I said, Marx was kind of, well, he was deterministic. He had a kind of view of what the history, well, the right side of history, he knew what he wanted, and he actually believed that society would actually flow towards that direction. So anything that stopped, that could be seen as obstacles in that direction, that includes small nations. See, I mean, he didn't like the Poles to be independent because it was diverting from the grand scheme of things. He didn't like the feminist movement to take kind of it was Rosa Luxemburg and Gramsci,
Yeah,
those people who brought in Gramsci brought
yeah,
in the national popular will, you know, and Luxemburg. Actually, now that I remember that the philosopher that you would like to kind of name most, that would be Gramsci, because his concept of national popular will, one, and his concept of the war of maneuver, war of, like, I believe that the best way for any politics, including progressive left wing politics, is to build a counter hegemony, come up with a vision, with a story, which not say to people, no debate, trans women are women, if you're white, you're doomed, etc. But just sneak into the system, understand even the worst of these ideas, and try to build your counter hegemony within the system. It's a long haul fight. That requires a lot of activism, not just writing, not just hashtag activism. That's the thing that I like most. And I'm not saying this because I'm on your program. There are things that I disagree with you, but what you're doing, this street epistemology thing, is a great idea.
I'm sitting here with the actual president of Street Epistemology International, Reed.
Yeah, I mean,
he's like literally 5 feet from me. I have touched this man. Not sexually,
I mean, it's amazing. I mean,
touched him.
it's like this is the thing. Like when I was a rabidly cosmopolitan, anti-nationalist person until I came and started living in Catalonia. Then I was, I was talking to my students, or like, undergrads as well, 19 to 21-year-olds, and I understood what it means to people, for instance, better, because it's different when you evolve, and I'm not allowed to. It's like this, the apology thing. Like there is no redemption in woke cancel culture things. Why shouldn't I be allowed to change my mind?
All right. So before we wrap up here, what do you think? What should people know? What from your research and your work and your scholarship should people either take away from this conversation or take that we have not talked about?
Okay. If people read my book, they will see that it's it's not my personal kind of victimhood story. It's just mentioned. It's a learning process. What I learned from what I lived, and that was to look into my rabbit hole. The tribe that I thought was mine. That's the thing. So then, it's a call for listening, building bridges, building coalitions. And I mean, in the final chapter, I suggest a few things based on, as I said, the names that I gave you, like redistribution, recognition, more participation, and all of that, a social democratic project. They may disagree with it. That's not the issue. But the way to it, like the first 3-4 chapters, I'm telling how what passes as the left, woke left, is actually the same, it's the same side of the same coin, the different sides of the same coin. It's the same. It's Remus and Remulus. They are the same tactics, the same strategies, the same intolerance for dissent and disagreement, ad hominem attacks. You're a bigot. You cannot. You said it on in your podcast. You don't even have an address openly because you're worried about. I had the same problem with Turkey. I couldn't go to Turkey to visit my 84-year-old mom because there was an investigation about me for nothing. These are the things I couldn't suffer properly the grief for my son because I was being canceled at that point. So I had to survive. So that's what I learned. Like I learned to listen. I learned to be open to everything.
I'm genuinely sorry about that. I could not fathom the loss of a child. It must be, don't know how anybody would recover from that.
I know that you're doing plugs, and this is already a very famous person, so he doesn't need promotion. But anyone who is kind of suffering from similar things, I would suggest them to read Nick Cave's book and Nick Cave's blog, Red Hand Files. He lost his son, Arthur, at the age of 15. He's an amazing person. I mean, whatever you think of his, his music or whatever, this is a different thing, because the only person who could understand this is someone who lost his baby.
He's a good guy. He's a super good guy. Okay, cool. Yeah. So I appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation. Where can people find you in your work?
Well, I mean, I'm on Twitter. My name, Umut Özkırımlı, my handle. I have my website, the same, my name together. I'm trying to open up a little bit more. I'm writing in the critic. I'm all over the place. Not in the mainstream media because I'm not liked there. I used to write for the Guardian for 2 years, but for
Ouch.
some
Sorry about that.
reasons,
Yeah.
well, I mean, things do happen. Spain is good. I like Spain. It's much more kind of lively,
Yeah, I was
doesn't
just in Spain. I had a wonderful time. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you having a conversation with me, and
and
stay
thank
on.
you.
Stay on
Yeah.
after we end this. And thanks to our super chats, and thanks to the people who subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it. Reed and I will be doing a lot of live streams, and we have some street epistemology coming out. We're in LA, and we have some wonderful conversations between Michael Schellenberger, some street epistemology between Michael Schellenberger and Michael Shermer that should be out very, very soon. And we appreciate the listeners, and we appreciate our guests. So thank you very much for having a conversation, and I hope people pick up your
Thank you
book.
for having me, and thank you to Reed. And also, I would just like to send
The
a
president
hi
of
from
Street
here.
Epistemology International is right over
Exactly, the
there.
president
Few
of
feet.
yeah, exactly. And a shout out to Alan Sokal, who
Oh,
introduced us.
Alan,
My
good.
dear friend, I mean, amazing guy.
Yeah, I'm going to see him when I go back in January. We go to this nice little restaurant that we have. I usually don't eat Italian, but it's a particularly good Italian place by his home in London. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thanks everybody.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you.
Cheers.
Stay on. Don't hang up yet. Thank you for watching. Everything we do is under the umbrella of the National Progress Alliance, nationalprogressalliance.org. It's a nonprofit, independent 501c3. Your generous donations keep us going and keep fueling content like this. So please help us out. Make a donation. We very much appreciate it. Thank you.